On this Saturday night, truckers roll into Ottawa, hauling their anti-vaccine mandate message.
Let us free! Let us free! End these mandates!
Fringe groups catch a ride on the convoy.
Freedom!
Concerns about safety put the Prime Minister on the move. And pushing back against Putin, NATO's next move to avoid all-out war. And wicked weather hits the eastern seaboard.
This is one of the worst storms I've seen so far.
How the supply chain crunch is making it harder to dig out.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Chris Galis.
The trucker convoy has arrived in Ottawa. Parliament Hill is filled with thousands of protesters. Yes, truckers who oppose government vaccine mandates, but also many others who have much different agendas. The demonstration is expected to last all weekend, but some are vowing not to leave until all public health restrictions are lifted. Good evening and thanks very much for joining us. The protest underway in our nation's capital is loud and proud, but so far authorities say it has been peaceful. Our chief political correspondent, David Akin, has been covering the convoy all day and has the latest on the demonstration there. David.
Chris, there's a reason all these protesters came here to Parliament Hill. It's because this is where the politicians work whose rules they don't like. So far, over 2 days, it's been noisy but peaceful. And while protesters have many different grievances, the common denominator is the desire to be rid of vaccine mandates.
It's all mandates. It's for the freedom of everybody here. That's why I'm here. And I'm going to stay as long as it takes to change everything.
In fact, convoy organizers say they'll stay put, clogging up Parliament Hill until the federal government changes the rule requiring international truckers to be vaccinated. They might be waiting a while. The federal government refuses to change vaccine mandates for its own employees and those working in a federally regulated sector.
We then went on to implement it in the transportation sector, but we gave truckers more time to get vaccinated.
The opposition leader, Aaron O'Toole, met with some truck drivers Friday, according to this tweet, though his office has refused to answer calls or emails to explain who he talked to or what he said. But while O'Toole avoided the spotlight Saturday, many Conservative MPs like these two from Alberta were in the thick of it.
I'm just here to listen to the voices of Canadians who are peacefully assembling by and large.
But while the Conservatives stand with the truckers, many of these protesters, well, they stand with Maxime Bernier, leader of the People's Party of Canada.
Well, I hope that the traditional politicians will understand that, we must reopen the economy, we must stop all these mandates.
As for municipal politicians, Ottawa's Mayor Jim Watson was upset at this. Several protest vehicles, including an RV, parked overnight on the cenotaph at the National War Memorial. Some would leave, some were towed by Ottawa police. And Watson later said that parking on what he called the sacred ground of the tomb of the unknown soldier was a sign of complete disrespect. Watson and others also slammed the protesters for desecrating the Terry Fox Monument on Parliament Hill. Also today, the Canadian Trucking Alliance issued a statement saying to Canadians that those you may see and hear this weekend here, many of them are not connected to the trucking industry. And the Alliance also says to Canadians that the vast majority of their members, their truckers, are, like most Canadians, fully vaccinated. Chris?
David Akin in Ottawa. Thanks, David. Now, smaller protests were also held across the country in solidarity with those in Ottawa. A slow-rolling convoy formed in British Columbia's Fraser Valley, eventually making its way to Vancouver's downtown core. In Alberta, RCMP issued several travel advisories as large demonstrations there disrupted a number of highways in the southern part of the province. And protesters also gathered outside the Manitoba legislature in Winnipeg. The protest in Ottawa forced the cancellation of a vigil to mark the 5th anniversary of the Quebec City mosque shooting. On this day in 2017, a lone gunman opened fire on worshippers inside the Islamic Cultural Center. 6 people were killed and more than a dozen others were injured. Members of the Muslim community had planned an in-person vigil today at the Human Rights Monument in Ottawa, but they say threats of violence coming from some of the convoy's attendees forced them to cancel the live event.
I'm frustrated and I'm angry. This protest that's going on, it's been labeled a freedom protest. Well, no, you know what? No, it's not a freedom protest, because my freedom, the freedom of all those who are going to gather tonight, get together, our freedom has been taken away to gather peacefully.
The group will instead hold a virtual vigil to remember those killed in the attack. It's been nearly 2 years since COVID-19 was declared a pandemic. Daily confirmed cases remain at record high levels in some jurisdictions, but there are signs infections may have peaked nationally. And that has many Canadians wondering when we might get back to normal. New Ipsos polling done exclusively for Global News shows roughly 1 in 5 people feel things are normal now. And about the same number say they're not sure they'll ever be ready to live without masks or vaccine mandates. 64% say they believe governments aren't doing enough to get us back to normal. But according to Ipsos CEO Darrell Bricker, they can't agree on what politicians should be doing.
This is the controversy coming back into things, and things are not as certain as they once were around this pandemic and the management of it. What we're running into now is a whole bunch of questions about how we're going to be moving into the next phase of however we're going to be dealing with this.
But Bricker says those surveyed are united on one thing, and that's keeping the healthcare system safe. 81% believe that has to be our top priority. The White House is closely watching Russia's military buildup along Ukraine's borders. U.S. President Joe Biden says a small number of American troops will be sent into Eastern Europe to counter rising fears of a full-scale Russian invasion.
I'll be moving U.S. troops to Eastern Europe from the NATO countries in the near term.
Russian troops are now lined along Ukraine's border in Belarus for so-called military drills. Belarus's strong-arm leader, Alexander Lukashenko, says there will be war if there are any signs of aggression towards his troops or Russian forces. The Pentagon says U.S. troops are on standby for deployment to support NATO allies. Canada has committed non-lethal support to Ukraine, mostly in the form of training Ukrainian forces. But some critics say that's not enough and question whether diplomacy has a real chance of success. This week on the West Block, Eric Sorenson speaks with Ukraine's former ambassador to Canada. So, Eric, what did he have to say?
Chris, the ambassador made it clear Ukraine wants more help and it wants it now, and that includes weapons. Canada has agreed to extend its training mission in Ukraine for 3 years and to add 60 more troops to continue to train Ukrainian soldiers. Plus, Ottawa is offering non-lethal equipment.
We do have some mixed feelings here.
Ukraine's former ambassador to Canada, Andriy Shevchenko, told Global's The West Block that his country appreciates Canada's help, but would have liked weapons such as anti-tank guns.
And when it comes to the weapons, it is one of the most powerful signals of deterrence towards Russia, and we do need them now, not when the aggression escalates further. Putin, Kremlin, his generals, and the Russian soldiers have to clearly realize the consequences of their moves.
As Russian troops continue to build along the Ukrainian border, Shevchenko says Russia's Vladimir Putin is trying to blackmail the West to get what he wants, which is a guarantee that Ukraine will not join NATO.
It seems to be more sort of a psychological warfare. As of the moment, it can turn very physical, very brutal, and militarily catastrophic in no time. And it's extremely dangerous.
The risk, he says, is not just to Ukraine, but to global security. Along with Andriy Shevchenko, we will have on the West Block Sunday morning Omar Alghabra, the federal transport minister, who will talk about the disruption in Ottawa this weekend from the truck convoy and other protesters. Chris?
Look forward to the program. Thanks very much. Eric Sorenson in Ottawa. A powerful winter storm is sweeping through the Maritimes, blanketing provinces in snow. Most of the region came to a standstill today, with police warning people to stay home and avoid treacherous driving conditions. Flights, ferries, and bus routes all saw cancellations across the board. Environment Canada says some areas could get up to 40 centimeters of snow. Coastal areas are expected to get several hours of freezing rain. Now, that same system spawned an historic blizzard bearing down on the northeastern U.S., with the possibility of up to 60 centimeters or more of snow in some areas. High winds and heavy surf are forcing many people to leave their homes. Governors have declared states of emergency in at least 5 states, and officials are warning wind chills will be dangerous. Jennifer Johnson reports.
From the mid-Atlantic to New England, millions of Americans woke up to blinding blizzard conditions. Snow is falling at record rates and winds have been clocked at more than 130 kilometers per hour. In many coastal towns, residents have been told to get out as hurricane-force storm surges cause widespread flooding.
This is one of the worst storms I've seen so far.
The wicked winter storm is hitting 10 states, pummeling some of the country's biggest cities, including Philadelphia, New York, and Boston. Airlines have canceled more than 4,500 flights. Amtrak suspended or limited rail service on the busy Boston to Washington corridor.
I'm going to say it again. To the fullest extent possible, stay off the roads.
Several states ordered all vehicles except essential personnel and first responders off the roads. Heavy trucks have been banned from numerous highways. Adding to the concerns, more snow plows than operators in several areas as COVID-19 keeps many drivers sick at home. And supply chain issues have caused a severe shortage of snow blowers.
Normally I get somewhere between 90 and 110 units, and this year I got 11. And that's all production problem.
Widespread power outages are being reported, tens of thousands already in the dark in Massachusetts. The good news, this massive storm came on a weekend, with few commuters on the roads and schools closed. But not everyone thought that was a bonus.
It could have came during the week when I had to work. That would have been better for me. It would have been a snow day with pay.
Despite the dangers of this powerful storm, many New Englanders are taking it in stride.
Gonna build a snowman. I'm gonna throw snowballs at people. It's gonna be great classic fun. I'm excited.
But first responders are more concerned, asking millions to take precautions as this latest nor'easter takes a vicious winter whack at America's East Coast. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
Still ahead, cracking the long COVID code, what researchers are learning that could help clear up infections sooner. And you don't know what you got till it's gone, why you won't find Joni Mitchell's music on Spotify anymore.
Don't it always seem to go? You don't know what you've got till it's gone.
Canadian music legend Joni Mitchell is removing all of her music from Spotify. In a message to fans, Mitchell says she's standing with Neil Young, who demanded his songs be pulled from the streaming giant in protest of Joe Rogan's podcast. Young accuses Rogan of spreading COVID-19 misinformation and refused to share a platform with the comedian and commentator. Rogan's podcast is by far the most popular on Spotify. Well, researchers are continuing to unravel the mystery that is long COVID, a condition impacting hundreds of thousands of Canadians. While there is still a lot we don't know, a pair of new studies is shedding new light on the neurological symptoms many long haulers are experiencing. Heather Yourex-West reports.
When Heather Jane first began experiencing symptoms of long COVID, she had no idea what was wrong.
My acute phase of COVID was in the very early first wave, April 2020. And so, for me, it was really hard to understand what was happening to my body.
It's estimated that more than 1/3 of COVID-19 sufferers will report continued symptoms like fatigue or breathing problems for months after their initial infection has resolved. And now researchers out of Australia are beginning to better understand who has been impacted.
We found when we looked at the blood and as well as immune cells within these participants, that there was a dysfunction within the immunological pathways.
The discovery of a biomarker within a patient's blood could not only help develop a better tool to diagnose the illness, but could lead to better treatments as well. While researchers still don't know what causes long COVID, a leading theory is that parts of the virus can linger in the body, causing inflammation triggered by a prolonged immune system response. And according to another recent study, that inflammation can cause neurological symptoms for up to 9 months.
Young people who survived through COVID-19, despite the fact that they didn't have any symptom or have the only mild symptom, months later, they still had a very mild impaired impairment in memory and attention.
While there is still much to learn about this condition that for some can be debilitating, Heather Jane is trying to maintain hope.
I'm a very different person now, and I've been forever changed by this experience.
2 years after her first infection, the Toronto woman is now recovering from COVID yet again, unsure of how this second round will impact her long-term health. Heather Yourex-West, Global News, Calgary.
Coming up, it's one of the most pristine marine ecosystems on Earth. Why the Weddell Sea off Antarctica is under threat and worth saving. A state of emergency has been declared in an area of Thailand after an oil slick washed up on a stretch of beach near Rayong, about 2 hours south of Bangkok. It's estimated between 20 to 50 tons of oil leaked Tuesday night in the Gulf of Thailand from an underwater hose used to load tankers. The leak was stopped within hours, but oil hit local beaches today. There are fears this will decimate the local tourism industry, already struggling to recover from the pandemic. Scientists are calling for protection for a barely understood part of the world, a piece of Antarctica called the Weddell Sea. It sits at the top of the continent, southeast of Argentina. Scientists say making it a marine protected area would shield it not just from climate change, but from human threats. And as Ross Lord reports, experts say there's not much time left.
At a time when climate change is making waters in the Antarctic warmer and rearranging ocean currents, the Weddell Sea has been mostly immune.
It's an area that's going to have, hopefully, a more or less intact ecosystem for much longer than we're going to have in other parts of the Antarctic.
More time for penguins and other species to adapt to whatever changes they eventually encounter. But researchers and conservationists say marine animals need protection from other threats, like large-scale fishing. They're pushing for the Weddell Sea to be declared a marine protected area.
Governments have failed for several years to create an ocean sanctuary in the Weddell Sea. This cannot be another year of delay and continued harm to penguin populations and other wildlife here in the Antarctic.
Marine protected areas are becoming widespread. By some estimates, almost 8% of the ocean is under some sort of protection, including 14 locations in Canada. At 2.8 million square kilometers, the Weddell Sea would be the largest marine protected area on Earth. But holdouts, including China and Russia, are reluctant to give up their fishing interests. As the political wrangling continues, so does research, like determining how penguin populations are holding up in the current environment.
We need to do science on the ground first. That's why we're in a place like this, a penguin colony, to understand change and what's here already so that we can protect the species where they need it most.
Bolstering their argument for conservation, fully aware that what ultimately happens in the Weddell Sea is out of their hands. Ross Lord, Global News.
Next, finding refuge in playtime. Afghan refugees get out of quarantine and have some fun exploring their new home. That is Ash Barty celebrating big after serving up success on home soil, ending a 44-year-long Grand Slam drought. The 25-year-old became the first Aussie to win the Australian Open since Christine O'Neill captured the women's singles title back in 1978. And she did it without losing a single set.
This is just a dream come true for me, and I'm so proud to be an Aussie. So thank you so much, everyone.
The women's world #1 recovered from being 5-1 down in the second set to beat Danielle Collins 6-3, 7-6. Barty now has 3 Grand Slam titles under her belt. How about that indeed? The greatest quarterback to ever play the game is apparently calling it a career. The NFL confirms 44-year-old Tom Brady is expected to retire after 22 seasons and 7 Super Bowls, including last year's victory in his first season in Tampa Bay. He came back to attempt a repeat, but Tampa got bounced from the playoffs. Brady leaves the game holding records in Super Bowl victories, passing touchdowns, and several other categories. Well, since arriving in Canada, some young refugees had a chance to run and have some fun with other children during a field trip to explore their new home. As Global's Dan Grummett reports, the children are finding refuge in playtime.
Kids typically love field trips. This one is sorely needed.
I can tell you they were really excited. They saw the bus pull up and they thought they were going to school.
No school, not yet. Instead, this visit is more like recess, playtime that's eluded these kids most of their lives.
They've been living under a lot of anxiety, a lot of tension, a lot of danger.
They are Afghan refugees, and along with their parents, fled their home country last year to escape the Taliban takeover. They were in hiding until finally coming to Canada 2 weeks ago. Since arriving in Edmonton, they've been quarantining in a hotel.
The hotel facilities are wonderful for a place to sleep and a place to eat, but it's not really set up for a place to play.
This week, it was finally time for some fun. Catholic Social Services, which is helping resettle 170 Afghan refugees in Edmonton, partnered with a local youth sport organization to access the space for the more than 60 kids.
They don't have a lot of structure in their lives, and so this is a great opportunity for kids to come here, play.
For these parents to be able to have their kids come here in a safe place, to be able to play for the first time in months, if not years, is just something you can't put a value on.
It's just a couple of hours of sport, but it epitomizes why their parents risked their lives to come here, for the freedom to act their age. Dan Grummett, Global News.
Awesome. And that is Global National for this Saturday night. I'm Chris Galis. Tonight, your Canada is a shot of Shuswap Lake from Salmon Arm, BC. We'd love to see your corner of the country, so please keep sending those photos to viewers@globalnational.com. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you back here tomorrow. Hope you have a great night.